Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're headed to a place known as God's own country.
Kerala, right. On the southwestern coast of India, it's famous for its stunning backwaters and lush greenery.
Exactly. Kerala also boasts one of the highest literacy rates in all of India.
But there's a bit of a paradox there.
You see, Kerala has a surprising problem.
Scams.
Yeah, scams. It's wild. We're going to dig into why this beautiful state with its highly educated population keeps getting hit with these schemes.
Oh, let's dive in.
We'll be looking at excerpts from this podcast script called Half-Price Dreams, Full-Price Nightmares, Why Keralites Keep Falling for Scams.
Catchy title.
It really sets the stage, and it gets right to the point. In 2023 alone, over 23,000 people in Kerala reported losing a total of 201 crore to online fraud.
201 crore. Wow, that's what, over 200 million US dollars?
Yeah, and that's just what was reported. The actual numbers are probably much higher.
Makes sense. Lots of people don't come forward, right?
Right. Either out of embarrassment or because they still hope to get their money back. The script highlights this with a crazy story about a doctor.
Oh, what happened?
This doctor from Kozhikode transferred a mind-blowing 4.08 crore to scammers. That's over $40 million.
No way. How?
He made 200 separate transactions before he even realized it was a scam.
200. You'd think after, like, 10 transfers?
Right. You have to wonder about the banks, too. Where are the safeguards?
Seriously. And this doctor, he's clearly a smart guy. I mean, he's a doctor. So it really shows that anyone can fall prey to these scams.
Absolutely. And the script really gets into the psychology of why this happens, especially how scammers exploit those common desires.
The desire for a good deal, you mean? Like, who doesn't love a bargain?
Exactly. And then there's this whole other case about a guy named Ananda Krishnan.
What did he do?
Well, at just 28 years old, he masterminded a massive scooter and laptop scam that defrauded people out of $1 billion US.
A billion. With a B.
Yep, $1 billion. And one of the tactics they use, it was really common, they promised half-priced goods.
Ah, classic. Plays right into that too good to be true mentality.
Right, and the script points out that this is particularly effective in Kerala.
Why?
Because of the cultural emphasis on community and trust.
Yeah.
People are more likely to believe a recommendation from someone they know.
Ah, I see. It's like if your neighbor scored a killer deal on a laptop.
You might be more inclined to jump on the bandwagon, even without doing your research. The script actually interviews a psychiatrist, Dr. Arun B. Nair, who has some interesting insights.
About Keralites specifically.
Yeah. He suggests their competitive nature and desire for shortcuts to wealth could be playing a part.
Oh, that's interesting. Like if everyone around you seems to be getting ahead.
You might be more tempted to take a quick and easy path, even if it's risky.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that fear of missing out, that FOMO, that plays right into it too.
It's a powerful motivator, and scammers know how to exploit it. They create this urgency, make it seem like you have to act now or miss out on a golden opportunity.
And when you combine that with, what was it, Dr. Nair's point about herd mentality?
Yeah, the idea that if everyone else is doing it, it must be okay.
It's a recipe for disaster.
So we're starting to see this pattern emerge. You've got the cultural values, the psychological tendencies, and then those crafty scammers weaving it all together. But here's the thing, this scam problem in Kerala, it's not new.
Oh, really? You mean it's been going on for a while?
Oh, yeah. Kerala has a long and colorful history of scams, going back decades.
Wow, so this isn't just a product of the internet age.
Nope, not at all. The script calls it blasts from the past, and the first one they highlight is the Aduthek Mangium scam.
Aduthek? What was that about?
It involved goat and tree farming, promising crazy returns on investment. They even organized elaborate farm tours to make it seem legit.
Oh, wow. Farm tours. That's a new level of deception.
Right. But of course, the goats, the trees, the profits, it was all a facade.
So even back then, they were preying on that same desire for wealth and financial security.
Exactly. And it shows that human nature, those vulnerabilities, they're kind of timeless. Scammers just find new ways to tap into them.
And speaking of timeless scams, what about the classic get-rich-quick schemes? Do they have those in Kerala too?
Oh, absolutely. The script talks about the Total 4U scam, where a guy named Sabaranath promised to double people's money instantly.
Double their money instantly. Come on.
No, right? It's so obviously a scam, but people fell for it hook, line, and sinker. He even offered 20% commissions to those who brought in new investors.
Classic pyramid scheme tactic.
Yep, creates that snowball effect, dragging more and more people in. This one eventually collapsed in 2008, leaving tons of people in financial ruin. but it wasn't an isolated incident.
So there's a pattern of these major scams happening in Kerala.
Oh, yeah. The script mentions another one, the high-rich online shop scam. This one was cleverly disguised as a legit online reward system.
Oh, so more of that internet age deception.
Exactly. It drew in over 169,000 people who each paid 10,000. But it turned out to be a classic Ponzi scheme.
Hold on, for those of us who aren't finance experts, could you explain what a Ponzi scheme is?
Sure, it's basically a financial house of cards. They pay early investors with money from new investors, not actual profits.
Ah, so it's like a financial bubble just waiting to burst.
Exactly. And this high-rich online shop definitely burst, costing people crores of rupees.
It just shows how scammers are getting more sophisticated, using technology to reach wider audiences.
And even though the methods change, those underlying principles, they stay the same. Exploit trust, promise easy money, create urgency.
It's a potent combination.
And the script goes on to describe another case, a guy named Thomas Daniel, the mastermind behind the popular finance scam.
This one's interesting. It wasn't about flashy deals or getting rich overnight.
What was his angle?
Daniel convinced people to deposit their money with his company. He promised super high interest rates.
So he played on that desire for a safe, stable investment, but with the added bonus of a big return.
Exactly. Sounds great, right?
Yeah, but
But there was a catch. Instead of investing responsibly, he used the money for all sorts of shady stuff.
like what?
Illegal imports, risky ventures, even funneling money overseas through something called Hawala transactions.
Hawala transactions.
Yeah, it's this informal way of moving money without actually moving any cash.
How does that work?
It's based on a network of brokers who settle debts between people, all based on trust.
So it's kind of like an underground banking system.
Pretty much. It's often used to avoid taxes or move money discreetly.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was used for illegal activities.
So Daniel took people's money and basically gambled with it.
Exactly. And this popular finance scam really highlights how important it is to look beyond the surface.
To really understand where your money's going.
Yep. And it all comes back to that central question.
How do these scams keep happening in a place like Kerala, a state with one of the highest literacy rates in India?
It's the literacy paradox, right? You'd think educated people would be more scam-proof.
But it turns out that's not always the case.
Well, remember Dr. Nair, the psychiatrist? He pointed out that high literacy doesn't always mean high financial literacy.
That's a good point. You can be brilliant in literature or science, but still lack the specific knowledge to navigate the financial world.
It's like being fluent in one language but struggling in another.
And that can leave people vulnerable to exploitation. The script also brings up another factor: blind trust in endorsements.
Ah, yeah, the celebrity effect.
Exactly. Whether it's a movie star, a politician, even a religious leader, people often assume if someone they respect vouches for something, it must be legit.
We're wired to trust those we admire. But it's important to remember, everyone has an agenda, even those we hold in high esteem.
They can be misled or manipulated too.
Exactly. Trust should be earned, not blindly given, especially when it comes to money. Do your own research, ask questions, seek advice from unbiased experts.
Don't just take someone's word for it, no matter how much you respect them.
Exactly. So we've got low financial literacy, misplaced trust.
And that creates fertile ground for scams to take root. And then there's another factor that allows these scams to persist: the reluctance to report them.
Ah, right. The shame factor.
Exactly. People feel embarrassed, like it's a reflection of their intelligence. So they suffer in silence.
And that allows the scammers to keep operating, leading to even more victims. It's a vicious cycle.
We need to break that cycle by talking more openly about these scams.
Create a safe space for victims to share their experiences without judgment.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, and the more we understand how these scams work, the better we can protect ourselves and each other.
And we can't forget that scammers are constantly evolving their tactics. They're like chameleons, adapting to find new ways to exploit vulnerabilities.
Script mentions how they're using more and more sophisticated methods, like fake reviews on social media, forged documents, endorsements from influencers and politicians.
They're masters of manipulation, using every trick in the book to create an illusion of credibility. It's like a constant cat-and-mouse game.
So how do we keep up?
That's where financial literacy comes in. It's not just about knowing the difference between a Ponzi scheme and a pyramid scheme.
It's about thinking critically, questioning assumptions, being skeptical of anything that sounds too good to be true.
It's about empowering people to be their own financial detectives. Ask the right questions, do your research, Seek advice from trusted sources.
And create a culture where financial education is a priority.
Exactly. We've talked about the scale of the problem, the psychology behind these scams, the history, the literacy paradox, and the evolving tactics of scammers.
But the big question remains, what can we do to effectively combat this? Is increasing financial literacy the answer?
Or will scammers always find new ways to exploit vulnerabilities?
It's crazy, right? You think of Kerala, you picture these peaceful backwaters, beautiful beaches.
Not exactly a hotbed of scams.
But as we've seen, it definitely is. And this whole deep dive has really gotten me thinking. It could happen to any of us.
Oh, absolutely. Scammers prey on those universal desires. We all want a good deal, a shortcut to success.
And we're wired to trust certain people, especially those we admire.
Right. Celebrities, politicians, even religious leaders. Their endorsements can carry a lot of weight.
It's scary how easily we can be swayed.
And scammers know exactly how to exploit that. They create these elaborate schemes, make them sound so convincing.
It's like, for a second, you almost want to believe it's true.
I know. It's happened to me too. You get that email saying you've won a lottery you never entered, and there's this little part of you that's like, what if?
It's like they tap into that little bit of hope, that desire for a windfall.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be skeptical, not cynical,
Yeah.
but just discerning.
Question everything, especially if it sounds too good to be true.
Right. And do your research. Don't just rely on one source of information. Talk to people, read reviews, check for independent verification.
It's like if you're going to make a big purchase, you wouldn't just buy the first thing you see.
Exactly. You'd compare prices, read reviews, maybe even ask friends for recommendations,
So why wouldn't we do the same for financial decisions?
especially when those decisions could have a major impact on our lives.
It's like having that buyer beware mentality, but for everything.
Exactly. Be aware, be informed, be proactive.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Kerala's scam epidemic, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, first and foremost, remember that anyone can be a target. Scammers don't discriminate. They prey on those universal human vulnerabilities.
So don't think you're immune just because you're smart or well-educated.
Nope. We all have our blind spots, and scammers are experts at finding them.
Which is why financial literacy is so crucial. It's not just about knowing the technical jargon or spotting specific scams.
It's about developing that critical thinking mindset, questioning assumptions, being aware of the tactics scammers use.
And don't be afraid to ask for help. If something seems suspicious, talk to someone you trust.
A friend, a family member, a financial advisor. Get a second opinion.
Remember, scammers thrive on secrecy and isolation. By talking about these things, we can help protect each other.
So this deep dive into Kerala's scam problem has been fascinating, hasn't it?
Definitely. It's shown us how these scams are rooted in culture, psychology, and even economics.
And it's highlighted the importance of individual responsibility. We can't just rely on authorities to catch every scammer.
We each have a role to play in protecting ourselves and our communities.
So be aware, be informed, and be empowered. And if you encounter a scam, don't stay silent. Report it, talk about it, help break the cycle.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Stay safe out there, everyone.